Hi, welcome back. This video is going to be a little bit different now that the League series is done. I wanted to take a step back and reflect on a couple of things. First being my experience overall with the Shattered Relics League. And then I wanted to reflect a bit on the video editing challenge that was kind of going on behind the scenes. And then lastly, touch on the future of the channel. If that sounds interesting to you, you want to hear those thoughts, please stick around and let's jump into it. For the league's experience, I'm going to go through a couple of questions, starting with what were some of the major flaws and how could these have been improved? I think it'll be no surprise to anybody that the user interface was pretty terrible. You had to be in a bank to switch things around. It was really difficult to switch things around. Eventually, they did add the unequip all, which helped to some extent. Ultimately, the Ruinlight plugin that allowed for presets was really playing on the big issue that was with the main interface that you're interacting with to get the experience of leagues, to use the fragments, to use the setups. It would have been really nice to see Jagex implement some sort of preset like we saw with the plugin, so being able to save setups, and also do some sort of quick swapping between those saved setups. I know RS3 has this for things like bank presets, where you can save your gear, your inventory, and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying it has to go that far for leagues, but for the relics themselves, I think it'd be necessary. It allows you to just, you can do your theory crafting up front, save the setup that you want to use, and then quickly jump between it. So you don't have to go back and figure that out or spend, a minute going through the preset and going, okay, what was on here? Oh, this one, this one, this one, and putting that in. I think that the user interface was a big hurdle. It really killed the momentum. Every time you wanted to do something, you went, oh, right, I've got to go stand in the bank and I've got to switch all of these fragments out. And it actually got worse the farther into the game you got because you opened up more slots. So that's one more thing you have to figure out what you're going to swap around to. I think another major flaw that I found as I was going through was there was really too much going on with the currencies and the unlocks. So you had league points, which is for the ranks and the tiers. You had Sage's Renown, which was for unlocking things like skills, quests, bosses. And then you had all of these different fragments, each individually having levels to them. Going back to Sage's Renown, one of my biggest gripes was there was no cool use for it once you had unlocked everything. And I think an easy fix would just be allowing for auto completing more quests if they were wanting to implement a similar system. Because at the end of the leagues, I was left with like, I don't know, 100, 200 extra Sages Renown. I mean, it's just going to sit there. And if you watch other YouTubers who ended up getting a ton of league points, they did a ton of tasks, they'd have hundreds just sitting by. I think on the wiki too, there was something like close to 1,000 just like extra leftover. It might have been even more than that of Sages Renown if you did literally everything. And obviously, you don't want it to be to a point where you have to do everything to get enough Sages Renown to unlock everything. I don't know. One of the thoughts I had early on while I was playing is, ooh, I'm going to beat the system by doing some of these quests to make the prices cheaper. That way, I get more out of my Sage's Renown. And then I realized there was so much left over. Like, there was no point. That was an extra layer of thinking that just didn't need to happen because there was so much left over. So either restricting how much is around so that your choices are more meaningful, or having some sort of cool function after the fact. So once you've unlocked everything, you can still do stuff with it. Maybe you could use Sage's Renown to level the fragments, or to buy a fragment that you haven't gotten as a drop yet, something like that, you know? Now, going into the fragments, I think having the different fragment levels was a little bit too much, because you would get one, and sure, for some of the like skilling fragments, it's not so bad because you're thieving and you're getting XP really quickly, and so the chances of you pulling a fragment is relatively high, and you get a lot of them. Like I maxed out the thieving fragments really quick because you just pickpocket for like an hour or two, and you've probably gotten enough of the thieving fragments to have maxed them out. But for the higher tier ones, the ones where you have to go and kill God Wars bosses, I hardly saw any of those. So you would get the unlock for things like Bandosian Might, and that's great. But to actually get the like a duplicate for XP, it takes a ton of time. And I know with how much time I've got, it's just not feasible for me to like do everything and also kill bandos a bunch to get these high level fragments. And so then you're stuck between the choice of, do I do this activity and very slowly get the fragments and XP, a little bit more efficient, or do I go AFK in the Rune Essence mine to try and max it out? So I think what makes more sense is if you wanted to have some sort of leveling system on these fragments, you get one, it's level 1. You get a second one, it's level 2. You get a third one, it's level 3, then you're done. Or maybe you can earn them through a certain amount of XP, so you still allow people to go do other stuff to level them. But ultimately, I feel like it would be better just when you get the fragment, that's it. You get the fragment, you get the full effect. Because while it's cool to have the progression of leveling up the fragments, you're already doing so much else. Why not just get the fragment and have it be maxed? Or if you really want, maybe tie the power of the fragment to the tier that you've unlocked for the fragment slots. So by the time you've reached tier 7, all of your fragments give their full effects. Something like that. So you don't have to necessarily level these fragments on their own. I think it was just a step too far. And I know I've been bashing on things for a while, so I wanted to take a step back and talk about what were some of the major successes, because all of those points aside, I really loved the customizability of this league. One thing that I've noticed about past leagues is you might get to the end game and you've got this cool setup, but you couldn't necessarily go and try every boss. It's just not possible because of the restrictions that were in place. So the big benefit of this is the whole map is open. You can literally do whatever you want, which I thought was really cool. And I definitely think it gives the game mode a more casual feel because you can just go anywhere. You can do pretty much anything. The quest autocomplete was also huge for me. It's a great time saver. Obviously, Leagues is a temporary game mode. And so having the ability to autocomplete these quests, it saves you a lot of time. And it also, not a lot of people like the questing. And I don't know that I really would enjoy questing in the temporary game mode either. I mean, I did a couple of quests early on, like I mentioned, and it was really for the thought of saving Sage's Renown. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I really enjoy this quest, let me go do that. I wasn't even really doing it for the XP reward, because the XP is already quick enough going through the tiers and getting the different multipliers. So I loved the quest autocomplete. And I actually think, I mentioned this before as well, seeing more of that. If they're going to have all of this Sage's Renown, right? Just allow me to autocomplete all of the major quests. So I don't even have to quest if I want Barrow's Gloves, for example. It just takes a little more points. I can go do some tasks. One thing I also really enjoyed was the fragment powers and the different combinations, because it gave a lot of ability to theory craft and try different things out on the fly. So how did this league end up stacking up against the other leagues? One of the more noticeable things was that the ranks were so much more competitive in this league. I don't really know why. Maybe it's the fact that the map is more open, or maybe because it is the third league, people are really excited about it. Regardless, in previous leagues, if I had gotten 20,000 points, I might be Ruin tier or quite close to it. I don't know if I would have quite been Dragon tier, but the point still stands. I got to tier 7 and I looked at where Dragon tier was. I was like, there is no way, unless I'm playing this game 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day. There's like literally no way to get to Dragon. And Ruin really wasn't that much better. And I want to have a life. I like to be able to do the tasks, and maybe these ranks should be competitive. I don't know. I mean, I didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, but it certainly seemed more competitive than past leagues, where in past leagues you could be a little bit casual, play till the end, and you'd end up in Ruin tier. You wouldn't have to necessarily try that hard. Whereas like this one, you're like fighting to get out of myth. You know, I don't know what all behind the scenes made that happen, but definitely something I noticed. Something I also saw a lot of, not just with myself, but I know a lot of YouTubers mentioning this too. All of these different choices, it really led to the feeling of a slower pace when you were comparing it to other leagues, because you had to spend the time to theory craft. And obviously, I enjoy that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned it before. But not everybody does. And I think one of the other benefits of previous leagues is you were given like 2 or 3 choices when you would open up a new fragment. And you would just, like, 2 to 3 choices, it doesn't take you a lot of time to think through. You make it, and then you can't change it. So there's no going back. You don't have to think about it again. That's it. Whatever you picked, that's where you're at. And it was the same with like the area locks as well, right? As you opened up these different areas, once you made that selection, that's it. You're done with the decision. You don't have to go back to it. Whereas in this league, every time you unlock a fragment, every time you unlock a slot, every time you unlock a boss, a quest, a skill, you have to go back and recalculate your whole plan. That might sound a little bit dramatic, and in a way it is. However, there's some level of truth to it, and it actually is one of those elements that gets worse the farther into the league you get. Particularly with fragments, because you're playing the game, and then you unlock Bandosian Might, and now you have to think, oh, how am I going to use this? Should I spend my time leveling it up? How should I level it up? What skills should I use? What's going to be efficient? Now I've got to manage these tasks, but I also wanted to do bossing, and now this looks like it's going to be good for bossing, but it's not leveled up, and it starts to become a really complicated decision. And considering a lot of people in this game like to focus on efficiency, that plays a big part into it as well. And I also think going back to that idea of presets and not being able to quick swap, that also really hurt the pacing because you could spend a lot of time theory crafting and feel relatively good about it, but it's so difficult to swap between things. Something you may have noticed in the series is I basically did no farm runs. I think I did one full farm run, and that was because I just didn't want to be bothered. Like I want to get the fragments on. I want it to be fun, and I like go through and I get all of this stuff, and I was really impressed with the one farm run, and it made me think, hey, maybe I should have done some more of these. But God, if it didn't take me like 10 minutes to figure out how to get the fragments on, which I know that's still a little bit of a dramatic time, but you know what I mean? Like if I want to do the farming run, I don't want to spend a couple of minutes sorting out the fragments and then going on the farming run. I just want to grab my stuff and go on the farm run. So my final thoughts, overall, I did still have a lot of fun. And I liked the more casual feel. And I actually would have loved to see less grind on the fragment levels. And that way it would have given me more time to play around with them on endgame content. And I think that it's probably a fair assumption a lot of the people who play are in a similar situation to myself where they can't play full time. So if Leagues is going to go more towards a casual feel, then just commit to that. Or if it's going to be more competitive, then commit to that too. I think maybe some of the identity of this league was a bit confused or lost. But again, overall, I did still have a lot of fun, and I still plan on playing the next league when it does come out. All right, well, with the leagues talk out of the way, let's revisit the video editing challenge. To recap, I was doing about 12 hours of recording time, which is the same thing as gameplay. About 3 hours of editing using a program called Shotcut, and then about an hour, sometimes 2, for making the actual post. So it'd be things like the thumbnail, putting together a description, etc. Overall, how did it feel balancing this with full-time work? Well, it was definitely challenging. Some days, being a bit tired, but having this feeling of a need to get things done. And particularly for editing, it wasn't that much of a challenge to sit down and play the game, but it could be a challenge to get myself motivated for editing everything together. Though once I was started, generally is pretty easy to finish things up, because again, that need to finish things kind of just kicked in. Ultimately, I do think it was just about the right balance. I could maybe do slightly more gameplay and slightly less editing as I improve, but ultimately I'm trying to keep the idea of sustainability in mind. So when I think back on it, I do think that the time was about right, with maybe some minor tweaks. What did you learn along the way? Well, talking coherently and fluently while playing is pretty difficult. It's definitely something I can practice and improve on in future videos. Also, with that in mind, it would save time a lot on editing and improve the overall video flow, because something you may have noticed is I was making cuts every couple of seconds. And that's any time that I had an awkward pause while I was thinking about something. There's probably going to be some of those in here as well, but you may not see it because I'm playing some B-roll in the background. I also found that some of the things I enjoy as a player aren't necessarily the same things that I enjoy as a viewer, and I want to make sure to strike a balance between entertainment and fun, because I want to have fun playing the game, but I also want to enjoy watching the video. I do want it to be entertaining. Something else I found is it was helpful to set a time limit, or I also like to call it a boundary around the episodes. And to pull an example from outside of the series, if you look at the very first video that I have on the channel, the Iron Main series that I had started and never completed, compared to what I did here, I had no limit around that first video. I don't think I even tracked how many hours I put in. I want to say it was around 200, which is crazy. Like, that's including things like gameplay, and granted, it's a high level account, so the grinds are pretty long. But that's also editing. I mean, I went crazy with the editing and re recording and doing all kinds of stuff. And again, going back to that idea of sustainability, it was so easy to burn out after that first video because when you put so much time in and then it doesn't necessarily blow up, it's tough. It's tough to keep doing that. And it doesn't feel very good, especially because even if I were to stretch that out, then I would be looking at making a video every 2 months, maybe, which that just doesn't seem in line with what I want to do. And I don't know that I would want to watch a series that I only got a video every 2 months, you know? Now, reflecting that back to the series that I just went through, the League series, 12 hours of recording time during the week, pretty easy to pick up. Spending about 3 hours of time editing, also, that's not asking a ton. Something that I found, and especially in, I don't remember if it was episode 4 or episode 5 in the League series, doing the montage, I made a joke about it eating up my entire editing budget, because it did. I ended up spending probably 6 hours editing that particular video, and it really felt nice to have that montage in there. It was really cool to do, and I would like to do more of that in future videos. But if you go back to that very first one that I was talking about, the whole thing is like chopped up montage, text everywhere, like, and that part, that's what takes so much time, and that's what's not sustainable. So there's probably a balance to strike there of doing the gameplay, but also sometimes taking a little bit of extra time to edit and put that cool stuff in, because it's fun to watch and also it's fun to create. But again, that's where those boundaries really help, because if I say, you know what, I want to give myself no more than 6 hours of editing because I know my schedule can't support more than that, it gives me an idea of what I can fit in without driving myself crazy, you know? So I think that's enough about that video editing challenge, and I want to talk about the future of the channel. I would like to continue making RuneScape videos, and likely that'll be more progress series with the focus on being casual, regardless of what the actual idea ends up as. And again, that is to really keep in mind that idea of sustainability, because I do work full time. So I don't have 40 hours a week available to me to edit these videos. So I do want to be careful about how hard I push myself with this stuff. As always, ideas and feedback are always welcome. So if you have a series in mind you'd like to see me do, feel free, leave a comment below. Even as this video ages, I do plan to come back periodically and check on them. So if you're finding this for whatever reason in the future, you can still leave those ideas and that feedback here in the comments. One thing I'd also like to do moving forward is change the editing software. Right now, what I'm thinking is Adobe Premiere Pro. It seems like it's pretty industry standard. I was talking to some folks that work in the graphic design department. It seems like that's the direction, or that's the software that they're using. And it's also the software that a lot of people recommend online. One thing I like about this is it'll make the skills I learn editing more transferable. So it gives me more opportunities in the future to do stuff like this and move away from an office job at full-time work. I also already use Photoshop for some of the other stuff that I do. I mean, I used Photoshop for the thumbnails on the video series, but I also make some graphic designs from time to time, and I do that in Photoshop too. So my hope would be that the transition to Premiere Pro isn't that difficult. So I know I've mentioned, the future of the channel is another series. I do want to take a 2 to 3 week break. And this is really to let myself reset after the League series because obviously you get a lot of crazy XP and then going back to normal RuneScape, you can probably see in the clip behind me, like the XP is nothing. And you got a bank and nothing's noted. And you don't get like 3 times the resources when you chop a tree. Ugh. So I want to like give myself a little bit of space between Leagues and going back into the normal game. That'll also give me space to really dig into some of the ideas that I have for the next series. And as a bonus, it also provides some space to learn a bit about the new editing software. So spending a bit of time with Premiere Pro and playing around with it. So that's it. You made it to the end. Thanks as always for watching, sticking around. If you like the video, like it. You want to see more, subscribe. Again, I do plan on making more, so more to come. And if you have any feedback or you want to discuss anything that I talked about here, leave a comment, and I'll do my best to reply back to everything. So again, thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great day, and I will catch you in the next video.